It looks like we're streaming.
We are live.
All right, beautiful. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1:30 on Tuesday, November the 24th. I'd like to call this special personnel committee meeting to order and acknowledge that the public and the press have been duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Still in the COVID world and still meeting virtually. We have two agenda items for our meeting today, starting with interviews of candidates for the City of Isle of Palms Board of Zoning Appeals and the ATAX committees. So with that, I know that our city staff has lined up the candidates for these positions for interviews. I know that we want to move into executive session to conduct those interviews. Ron, would you suggest that we make a motion to move into executive session, or do we need to have any, committee members, if I don't know if there's any discussion needed before we move into interviews? I'll look to city staff to make a recommendation as to next step here.
Councilmember Moy, Chair Moy, I believe that in the past, the question and answer has been done in open session, and then council would go into executive session afterwards to make a determination about who would be the right candidate. So we're ready to go and have that conversation quickly. And then after you finalize all interviews, we can go into executive session.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate the help. That's why I said I'm going to leave it to city staff, because I'm smart enough to know that I should. All right, good deal. Well, in that case, I know that Douglas Dressler was our first scheduled interviewee. Should we ping him to dial in?
I will go ahead and add him to the call now. Mr. Truslow, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon.
My wife was trying to do this on the Zoom, but I'm on the phone. So we've got each other.
That's great. You've got the full personnel committee at your on the other end of the line here. This is John Moy, and we've also got Rusty Streetman and Jimmy Carroll.
Okay. Hey, gentlemen, how you doing?
Good, Doug. How you doing? It's Rusty.
Nice to hear from you, Rusty. I was trying to do this with the Zoom, but I might have been challenged at the moment.
Where are you flying to?
Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving to you in advance.
Same for everybody else.
Thank you.
We're excited to got a daughter and grandchildren and son-in-law, and look forward to spending Thanksgiving with them.
Excellent.
All right, Mr. Moy.
All right. Well, Mr. Truslow, we have a pretty prescriptive, structured approach to this process, whereby we give everybody the same set of interview questions, and then we deliberate as a committee from there. We have, just to give you the lay of the land, we have 3 applicants for the ATAX, for 1 vacancy on the ATAX committee that we're interviewing for today. And so we're going to make a recommendation to City Council on December the 8th after our interviews today and our subsequent committee discussion. So that's what you got ahead of you. We're just going to ask a few questions, and I should have started with, please forgive me for not starting with, we're so grateful and delighted that you applied, and honored that you would serve the city in this capacity.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for your time today. Obviously, you know, we're in the unenviable position of looking at tons of qualified folks who live on the island who want to serve the city. And, you know, we want to say yes to everybody, but these are obviously you can't have 300 people on a committee. So
sure.
So the way it's going to work, I've just got 3 questions. I'm going to ask you the questions, and myself or any of our committee members might ask you follow up based on your response.
All right.
All right.
Sure.
We keep it pretty light and low key. So I'm going to just start off with asking you, will you describe your experience and what about your experience most qualifies you for the role and why you're interested in applying for it?
Okay. I have, by way of background, I've got a BS in business from the University of South Carolina. I was on the dean's list. I went to the university, graduated from the University of South Carolina Law School. I've been practicing law continuously since 1975. The highest rating that a lawyer can have by his peers is an AV rating. I have that highest ratings. I've been involved in a number of professional activities over the years, from things like being a guest lecturer at the law school and activities in the community. Never held public office before. I mean, I've been involved in things from the cultural things, and from the scouts to the church to clubs, sports, the normal things that people do, the zoo, museum. My wife is from the Isle of Palms. Her family moved over here, I want to say in the early 50s, maybe 53, and she grew up here. She went to college. We met in college, and her parents stayed here. So we've always, since I met Carol in say 1969, we always would come here on a regular basis. And then this is where she wanted to retire. So that's why we're here. We're involved. We try to be involved in the community, cultural things to the degree it exists. The festivals we all attend, I see y'all there too. The VFW, the church, and we do the things where they pick up the trash, but we do that on our own mostly. But we've done the trash pickups that Susan Smith was involved in. I think so what's that, 50 years of being involved in the Isle of Palms. Most recently, Carol moved back here after she retired and after her parents had passed, and rebuilt at the same location where she grew up on 21st. So then as soon as I finished my practice of law, that I'm still in closing, but just have a couple of cases left. This is where we decided to live. So this has been our home since late 2015, early 2016. For things that I think why I was interested, I looked at a couple of things, but when I moved down here, I'm going to say I wanted to be a part of the community, wanted to know how it had operated. So I did something that may sound weird, but I did it, and I'd do it again. Was I went back and read the minutes of the meetings of about from the time the Isle of Palms was organized as a city. I think that I want to say that was in 53, 55, somewhere in that range. Followed the minutes forward. I looked at planning. I thought planning was something that I could be interested in, but it looked like we had very qualified people that I didn't think that I could add anything that wasn't already there. I looked at I've always been interested in tax and tax related issues, so I looked at that. I have read all the minutes that I could find online about the ATAX, and then that follows follows into the meetings of Finance, Ways and Means Committee, the meetings about what's done with our money, and then just because it's maybe it's my training as a lawyer, and as what they train us for a lot is for critical thinking, and what you might think might not make sense. You need to keep an open mind. So I read all the laws regarding ATAX from the local level to knowing how the money is allocated, Robin Hood provisions, the oversight committee, and Turk, which is the state review of expenditures. Those are some of the things that I did. So I read statute 6-4-5 of the South Carolina Code. Again, I went through the meetings and the ATAX committee meetings, and that took me down a line I was interested in about what happened around the country regarding expenditures of ATAX money, whether it could be, I knew it could be used for, to a large degree for police and fire, but could it be used for things like drainage and sidewalks? And read some cases from around the country and saw some Wall Street Journal articles. And then I know that I knew then, and I know that the College of Charleston does some tourism analysis for the Charleston Area Visitors Bureau, and I communicated with one of the professors that led that up and read a lot of his articles. I reached for the Charleston Area Visitors Bureau, which handles money that doesn't go into our general fund. I kind of reached the point where I couldn't find out a lot because they're not subject to freedom of information. But I looked at what Hilton Head did, what Sullivan's Island has done or hasn't done. I want to say it's a $50,000 limit before you even have to have a deal with ATAX matters. I looked at Mount Pleasant, Bluffton, Beaufort, Myrtle Beach, the state tourism. I was also real interested in Folly Beach. I saw that Folly Beach had taken their money away from the Charleston Area Visitors Bureau and then doing their own thing. So I talked to one of the councilmen and reached out to one of the, I think he's a CPA that's handling that. So those are the basic things I've done. I understand how that ATAX works. I mean, there's a clear statutory scheme of things that we're what we're required to do, what we should do, what the standards are, what the state has said. I also looked at tell me if I'm giving you too much. I read the revenue ruling on how these funds are supposed to be spent, and the Department of Revenue is very helpful in kind of defining where monies can be spent or what they ought to be spent on. Advertising, publicity, the arts, cultural events, which I thought was of great interest and would help the Isle of Palms. Extra police, extra fire, restrooms, facilities for civic and cultural activities, transportation. You can use the money for beach improvement, and I would say that pretty much covers your question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that covers that. That covers. I was not just interested. If I was going to show an interest, I needed to kind of not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And so I found out as much as I could find out about how it operates, what's been done with the money, where it's supposed to be done. I saw that the Isle of Palms is. I want to say Linda Tucker was on the oversight committee for a period of time, which is reflected well on the Isle of Palms. I didn't see that the Isle of Palms had gotten in any trouble with this with state overview or Turk, which is another good sign. So those are the things I've done. I would think as a lawyer, the thing that I would could bring to the table that would be helpful. Maybe again, we're taught how to be taught critical thinking and understanding the nuances of the law.
Mhm.
So I would
Yeah.
say those are the primary strong points.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I'm gonna see if Rusty or Jimmy has any. Yeah, please go ahead, Rusty.
Yeah, Doug, this is Rusty. You just gave me a great education on ATAX and the history of ATAX on this island here. I have to say I'm impressed. If you went back and read all the minutes of the meeting since 1953, I guess it was when we were formed, and a lot of good information. It looks like you've really done your research here. I really don't have a follow-up question. I just wanted to make that comment that you seem to be, you seem to be really interested in the position, and we thank you for your interest here. So, thank you very much.
Well, I love this place. I love this place. I mean, I think y'all are doing a magnificent job. I don't think I read every minute from 1953, but I know I've read all the ones that related to ATAX and most of the financial related things, and the island's getting better, which is what we would expect. I mean, it's better and better and better. And as y'all know, I get my dander up sometimes when I feel like y'all get attacked, especially when it's unjust. And so that's another incentive to go look at things. I really do. I think I came from Columbia, and I can tell you some horror stories. This is heaven. This is heaven.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Doug, number one, thank you for your interest in serving on this committee. And like Rusty said, I served on ATAX for a few years, and I think you educated me a little bit more so. But I know your love of this island. I know Carol's love of this island, and I see y'all all the time down on the beach walking and picking up and stuff. And I appreciate y'all's love of this island. So I thank you for wanting to serve.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like you answered my question number 2 as well. I'm going to ask it in case there's anything else you want to add, but don't feel obligated, because from my standpoint, I think you answered the question, which is essentially it's a variation of question number 1, which is what motivated you to become involved in the city government, and what are the ways in which you feel like you can contribute most to the ATAX committee. So if you have anything,
I forgot about.
Yeah, go ahead.
I forgot that when I was early on in my career, we had, well, I remember when Wildoon started, and I was representing some developers that were doing a lot of work over there. It was primarily Ewing Hungerville, so we got to watch. I liked the process to see how things were done, how construction took place. The balance between residential, I call them visitors, day trippers, and how it all balanced out. So that was another thing that and was involved in, not in a bad way or against the Isle of Palms, but was involved in some of the litigation as we dealt with construction related issues. So that was just one other thing. Other than that, I think I covered it. Unless you have questions.
No, like I said, I think you covered it pretty well in your initial response. So I'll jump to our final question. We know you. I'm sorry.
No, I said I really do like the Isle of Palms, and the people here. I mean, it's just a warm community. People care about each other. Got a couple of hiccups, but nothing involving you or where I would be on the other side.
Well, that's you know what? That's a good segue into our final question, actually. Are there any groups or organizations that you're involved with now or previously that could present a conflict with your service to the city? And how would you a related question is, how would you go about making a decision that could ultimately have a negative impact on a friend or a neighbor?
I don't think I am a member of any organization that is in conflict. Like I said, the VFW. My wife is the member because she's the colonel. I'm a member, but I'm a member of the auxiliary. We have church. Those are the two primary things that we do on the Isle of Palms, and I can think about the aquarium, the museum, zoo, that sort of thing. But I don't think there are any. I can't imagine that there would be any conflict. I don't know of one.
Okay. And then if you, making it more micro and not to a group or an organization, but you certainly have friends and neighbors that live on the island, how would you go about making a decision that could potentially have a negative impact on a friend or a neighbor?
As a lawyer, I understand how conflicts work and where you should recuse yourself from voting. I've got to do what I think is right and in compliance with the law, regardless of friendships. I'd want to be open-minded and listen to people. And if I found that I had a conflict such as I can't imagine what it would be, but only thing I could think would be financial. Then I would have to just deal with the issue and use the experience I have as a lawyer to determine when somebody may be required to recuse themselves. I'm sure y'all get asked that not all the time, but frequently. Council members are called upon to be recused, and I understand what the laws are, and I think the standard is a pretty well respected, workable standard. So without knowing what if I didn't like somebody, I wouldn't vote just because I didn't care for the person. I'd be open-minded. If I felt like I couldn't be, then I would recuse myself.
Okay.
I don't. Otherwise, I just don't know. That's a tough one.
It is.
Potentially a tough one.
It's tough in practice. It's just as hard in practice too.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Doug, thank you again. From my standpoint, I don't have additional questions. I'm going to hand it off to Rusty and Jimmy if they have additional follow-ups here.
Mr. Chair, no further questions from me. I hope Doug and Carol have a great Thanksgiving, and we really appreciate you interviewing for this position. And I'm sure we will be getting back with you in due time.
All right. Y'all take care. See you.
Doug, that's good seeing you or talking to you, and we look forward to seeing you back on Isle of Palms.
All right. We'll be back next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Safe travel.
All right.
Bye.
All right. So next up, we have Jeannie Murray. I'm going to go ahead and let her into the meeting now.
All right.
Jeannie, are you there?
I'm here, Jimmy.
Okay. John, would you like to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hi, Jeannie. This is John Moy. I'm the chair of the Personnel Committee. First of all, thank you so much for your interest in serving our community, specifically on the Board of Zoning Appeals. We're very, very grateful for your interest in giving of yourself and your time freely. So let me just start by saying thank you on behalf of the council and the rest of the city. Oh, there she is.
Hey, Jeannie.
My first Zoom call, so I'm not too familiar with it. But I see Jimmy now. John is gone.
Okay. Well, I think you're going to see whoever makes noise. Well, you're knocking out the Zoom call, your first Zoom call out of the park, because you got in right away. So you're off to a great start from my standpoint, at least. Great. Well, first of all, like I said, thanks for being here. I like to set the stage with everybody that comes on. We follow a very structured process with all of our interviews so that everyone gets fair treatment, and we have a very objective methodology for determining what recommendation we bring to full council. So today we are interviewing 2 individuals for 1 vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we'll conduct our interviews. Absolutely. We'll conduct our interviews today. We'll deliberate in executive session, and then on December 8th, we'll make recommendations to full council.
Okay.
So we just have 3 questions we're going to ask you. This is not a high pressure job interview or anything like that, but giving us enough information so that we feel like we can make an informed recommendation to the rest of our elected officials.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the questions. We'll let you respond, and then either myself or Mayor Carroll or Councilmember Streetman might ask you a follow-up question.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll kick us off with just the basic. How would you describe? How does your experience qualify you for this role, and why are you even interested in applying for the Board of Zoning Appeals?
Well, I'm a resident of the Isle of Palms for 44 years, and I see a lot of building going on. I see a lot of contractors on the island, and I was involved in other city commissions in the past, and I'm retired now, and I just think it's time for me to get a little more involved. I love the island.
Lovely. Rusty, Jimmy?
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, Mr. Chair, I was mute there. Yeah, Ms. Mary, could you tell us a little bit more about the boards or commissions that you've served on, and in what capacity, and what you think you accomplished on those?
Well, as far as the city's concerned, I was a manager of the polls for several years, and I was on the playground commission for several years. We're talking a long time ago. It was when my children were young, and I stayed home and my children were young. And then I got a part-time job and continued a little bit on, but then when I went to full-time, it was just a little more difficult. I was also a soccer coach way back in the day when our son was younger. And I guess other than my major involvement, which was with Sullivan's Island School, that's where I did most of my volunteering. I volunteered there for 8 years, constantly.
Seems like you've done a lot of volunteer work in a lot of different areas, and looking at your application here. So you're to be commended for that. I certainly, for one of the committee here, appreciate you applying for this.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Yeah, and thanks for everything you've done leading up to now, though, how much you've contributed to our island community. Appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate the people that are on here and all the city council. I watched several of your Zoom meetings, and I don't know how you all do it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Jenny, number one, thank you for applying for this position. This is actually one of our toughest Board of Zoning Appeals, because it's kind of a quasi judicial. When somebody's building a house and we have certain challenges for a property. And so you're making a decision that really means a lot to somebody. So do you think that you are qualified for this position, knowing the weight of the power that's being put on you? Because I mean,
Yes,
this is a heavy one.
Well, I think I am, because I am very interested in the future of this island and whatever would be required of me. I don't know exactly all that would be involved, but I see the building that's going on. I see the flooding that's happening, which I probably does not come into that purview, but I care about the island. So I think things should be done correctly.
Right. And I know you love this island, believe me. I see you doing a lot of different things around the island all the time. And sometimes I'm with you when you're doing those things. So I do realize that.
Okay, I have to charge in my phone. I'm sorry. So I'm on the move.
I understand.
No problem.
But you answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. This question is similar to the first, but we kind of asked the same questions. It's a different angle of kind of, if you could give us some a description of what's motivating you to become involved in city government, and in the lens of how do you feel like you will contribute most to serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals?
Again, pretty much the same answer. I care about the island, and I care what happens to it, and the buildings that are being constructed, if they're within the 30, I think we have a 35% coverage right now. And I think the building up, my next door neighbor had the house next door put about 6 or 8 feet of dirt on his yard before he built. And my next door neighbor's yard now floods. Underneath the entire house is flooded. And so I think it's important that people follow the rules. And if I can help in that respect, I would like to do it. Short and sweet.
Yep, beautiful. All right, and then our last question is about potential conflicts. Are there any groups or organizations that you are involved with now or previously, whether that's a personal or professional organization, that could present a conflict of interest with your service to the city?
I would say not. I am involved with the Isle of Palms Garden Club, and I'm a member of the VFW Auxiliary, but I don't see any conflict in either of those organizations. And I volunteer at Sullivan's Island School for their after-school program.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't see any conflict there.
I hope not.
Unless one of you has a child going there.
And what about, how would you go about making a decision that could ultimately have a negative impact on a friend or a neighbor?
Rules are rules. That wouldn't impact my decision at all.
All right, Mr. Mayor, please.
Jenny, just this past year, we've done a lot of major changes in our zoning. And you already hit on one of them, you know, the 40% lot coverage down to the 35% lot coverage. We went from a minimum lot size of 17,500 square feet up to 35,000 square feet. Again, we're trying to be more resilient for, you know, flooding, sea level rise. And I mean, this is something that's going to be affecting us, not for the next year, but for forever. And, you know, you live back in Forest Trail, you know, an area back in there that, I mean, really the new Forest Trail probably has more flooding than anything. This is kind of things you're going to be hearing a lot about, is people looking for variances for setbacks or lot coverage or economic hardships or things like that when they're wanting to build a house. and you feel that you can handle and give your perspective point of view without bias.
Definitely.
Yes.
Again, I just go back to my first one. I see the island. I see some of the problems that are going on with the island, and I feel that sometimes there's abuse, and it needs to be taken care of. The flooding is tremendous, just in my little part of Forest Trail, and that what you just said with the 35% and the 3,700 square feet, I think you said, that should help. And I know you have some drainage projects going on that will help again.
Very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Rusty, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to commend again, Ms. Murray, for applying for this, and looking at your application and hearing you talk, I can tell that you are very much wanting to give back to the community as you have in the past, and by being on the board here, and you're very well qualified, just based on your interest in the island, everything you've done in the past, that sort of thing. And I like your comment about rules on conflict of interest or whatever. You seem to be the type of person that understands that that whatever's in place, you would be completely objective in making any decisions on the board. So again, no question here. I just want to commend you on applying and your interest in this position. And thank you very much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I hope I'm considered for the position. And if I am, I will follow the rules that are given to me.
Great. I don't have any further questions either. I would echo everything that Councilmember Streetman said. Very, very grateful both for your willingness and desire to serve now, as well as everything that you're continuing to do through the Garden Club and that you've done in the years that you've lived out here. So thank you. You'll hear back from us at the latest December 8th. I don't know if we typically give advance notice prior to that. Or I guess there will be a motion at the end of this meeting. Yeah. So.
Well,
yeah.
Now, just curious here. Will it be brought up in front of the board that I will see at a city council meeting, or will it be executive session? I'm just curious.
We'll deliberate in executive session, and then we will make a motion in public session to make a recommendation to full council.
Okay, well, I will be sure to watch that Zoom meeting. I do try and watch them sometimes, but you have so many of them, they
We have not noticed.
I'm sure three of you do notice.
Mr. Chairman, when we were meeting in council chambers, I'd see Miss Murray in our chambers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes a lot and pays attention to what we're doing.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeannie. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next person here.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Hey, Jeannie.
And that's going to be Brian Abel. Brian, are you with us? This is Ron.
Here he is. You might be on mute.
He's unmuted. Hang on a second.
Can you hear us, Brian?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
I was.
Oh, sorry.
Brian, can you hear us? look like Zoom is not picking up his headphones.
Yeah, it looks like an audio issue.
Brian, I'm sending you the phone number to call in now.
Can you hear me?
There we
Yeah.
go.
There we go. Okay, that works.
There we go. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Good. My pleasure.
All right. Well, I'm the chairman of the Personnel Committee, John Moy. We've also got Mayor Carroll and Council Members Treatman, as well as city staff, Ron Hanna and Desiree Fregoso. I always do a little bit of a setup before we launch into this interview, and I frequently forget to express our gratitude and appreciation for your willingness to serve and to spend time with us now, but also, of course, the time that you're committing in the future, should you be appointed to this board. So thank you very much for your willingness and for coming here today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We follow a simple structured interview process for all of our applicants. And so we'll just ask 3 short questions that I'll ask. We might ask follow-up questions based on the way that you respond. But it's meant to be very, very, very low pressure and short and sweet. And just to give us enough information to make an informed recommendation to the rest of the council. After our interview today, we'll deliberate in an executive session. And at the end of our meeting today, we'll make a motion to recommend one candidate of the 2 that we're interviewing for Board of Zoning Appeals to the full council. And on December 8th, we will present that individual as the candidate that we're recommending.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I'll jump in and just start off with, kind of a standard, what about your experience qualifies you for this role, and why are you interested in serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals?
Well, I did submit my resume to Ron. I don't know if you guys have a copy of it, but I was a structural engineer. I guess I still am a structural engineer for 44 years, and had my own business for the last 34 years, and did design work all over the country with various developers, various contractors, various architects, and other engineers. I think I was registered at one point in time. I was probably registered in 25 different states as a registered professional engineer. I've now retired all my registrations because I retired December 31st, and I'm in the process of selling the firm to the employees. Now, as far as why I want to be on this council or committee, I have owned property down here since 1998, and I'm very familiar with the island, or pretty darn familiar with the island. And I moved down here permanently, and this is my only residence, in 2018, and have some of you may have noticed, but I usually attend the city council meetings, and I'm very interested in. I look at that and I say, I really know codes inside and out, and how different things are structured with respect to planning and development and construction. And I thought that I might be of some assistance to the city, whether it be in this capacity or with the building department or something along those lines, just as part of my civic duty. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Next question.
The next question is essentially meant to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that, which is what else is motivating you, or what's motivating you to be involved in city government, and specifically, what are the ways what are the specific ways that you feel like you can contribute most?
Well, again, I've been on the board of directors at Racket Club. I'm on the board of directors at Ocean Club. I volunteered for other community situations, let's call it that. And I've always enjoyed that. And I enjoy giving back. And I think that one thing that I bring to the table is a very thorough knowledge of IBC, ASCE 7, UL. I can go on and on with AISC, ACI, along those lines. So mostly I would bring a technical expertise that I don't find a lot of that on the island, to be honest with you. Because as a board member here, when we reach out for technical people, we have to go way outside the area to get them. And now that I'm local, I thought that my experience might be of value to the city. When I had my business up in Maryland, we worked very, very closely with the county government up there and did a lot of work for the county government in partnership with them. And I enjoyed it. And it's just something I enjoy doing. I would be glad to help out in any way I can.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brian. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Abel, number one, thank you. And your background is very impressive. To me, this is probably one of our more important committees, with all the construction that's taken place on Isle of Palms. This past year or two, we've done a lot of changes and trying to become more resilient to sea level rise and things like that. Y'all's board, this board, the Zoning of Appeals, is a quasi-judicial position where you're going to be looking at issues that you have to make decisions on. And, people may want to do things that are not normally allowed. So again, it's a very important position to have. And again, you got to be a very impressive background, but there's going to be, a lot of things that come up in front of us, and you feel that you're ready to give us your expertise in that.
I do. And I've not on, say, a city government level, but on some other levels, I've participated in being an expert witness, testifying for various entities, and have been on review committees as well through a lot of my professional organizations that I've been a member, that I have been a member of. I just let most of them lapse. The American Society of Civil Engineers, National Society of Professional Engineers, Structural Engineers Association, American Concrete Institute. I can go on and on here, but the bottom line is that I have participated in situations similar to what you're talking about, where people are bringing stuff before a board or a committee to ask for variations or explanations of interpretations, primarily the code. And when I say the code, I mean IBC 2018 and all the accompanying codes that go with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Sheeman, I'm going to come back to you just because
Okay.
His response is a perfect seg into our final question.
Okay.
Which is, particularly in the Board of Zoning Appeals, you're likely to face a scenario where your decision could have a negative impact on a friend or neighbor, at least a perceived negative impact. How would you go about making a decision that might have that impact on someone that you're close to?
Well, that doesn't enter into it. Whether they're close to me or not shouldn't enter into it, and doesn't enter into it. And we have the codes, we have the regulations, and that's what we need to follow. If they can apply for a variance And if that's allowed, if a variance is allowed and everyone else, says that's okay, that's fine with me. Conversely, if I felt like I was too close to the person, I would say I should be recused from that decision. And, if it is somebody that I knew very closely and personally, that's probably what I would recommend, is recusing myself from that. But beyond that, I'm very much a code person. The code is the code. And that's what I have been trained to follow. And that's what I followed for 44 years.
Councilmember Treatment, please.
Yes, really, no question here, really, just a couple of comments. Mr. Abel, we really appreciate you applying for this. And I had a chance to look over, not only your application, but your extensive resume. I mean, you certainly, in terms of your professional memberships, what you've done in the past in your professional life and your ongoing educational stuff that you've done, serving on the board of directors out at the Ocean Club, very amply qualified here. And we really appreciate you applying for this and expressing an interest to continue with some civic duty here. I like your answers also too about the conflict, potential conflict, that if you had a situation where you felt that you needed to recuse yourself, you would certainly do that. But obviously would be objective in any decision you make, even if it was someone that you were fairly close to. So we just really appreciate you taking your time to apply. And we are so blessed on this island to have so many people that want to serve on boards and commissions that have such talented backgrounds. And it's just a pleasure to see that you want to help out in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I have a check the box question.
Okay.
I know I promised you 3. This is sort of part of the last one. And that's really just in terms of, are there any groups or organizations that you're involved with now, excuse me, or previously involved with, whether it's professionally and personally, that could present a conflict of interest with your service to the city?
I guess the only one would be being a board member of Ocean Club. If there was something here that we wanted to do from a construction standpoint or a planning standpoint or change something, that's the only thing I can think of that could be a possible conflict. Everything else was, all these other organizations I was a member of were national organizations. And of course, with ASCE, I'll always be a member of ASCE, that's American Society of Civil Engineers. Got my degree is a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Because when you get really, really old, they just keep your membership for free. So I'm actually a fellow at the American Society of Civil Engineers. But no, there's nothing that would be a conflict except for any potential conflict with Ocean Club. Yeah.
Sir, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Abel, thanks for bringing that up. I actually forgot all about that. Ocean Club at one time had planned 4 buildings down there, and there's 2 buildings that are existing. Are there any plans to go forward with future buildings?
No. When Hugo hit, the developer abandoned the property, basically abandoned his plans to build the other buildings, and he sold the land to the current owners. So I own 1/102nd of the property out there, and there's no way that we're going to sell this and have anybody build other buildings on it at no point. I can't. And by the way, the original plan was for 6 buildings. I have being the person that I am, I rooted out all the plans, the original plans of Ocean Club, and had them scanned and had them on my computer and that kind of good stuff. Because I always did. I guess I don't know if it showed up in my resume. I always did the IT for my company as well. So I'm very into having good electronic records. But nothing, no plans whatsoever for that. That would never come up on the agenda.
Thank you for that education.
Yeah. Good. Well, that concludes our formal interview. Again, I would echo Councilmember Streetman. Again, we can't thank you enough. And
Okay.
I was equally impressed with. I'm always so humbled with the amount of expertise we've got out here, and your long, lengthy, incredible resume is a powerful testament to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And we will move on to our next interviewee, who is going to be Ted McKnight.
Okay, now we're back to ATAX.
Correct. It's telling me that he's connecting to audio, but it's been saying that for a minute here.
If he's trying to use the phone, sometimes it can take a while.
There he is.
Ted, we can see you, but I don't think we can hear you. I've just sent you an email with a phone number to call in as well, if you need to do that. There we go. I think we got it.
Hear you.
We can hear you now.
Good.
Hello. Good afternoon, Mr. McKnight. How are you?
How are you? Just a second. Hey, Barb. Yeah. Could you turn on this other light here? Give me an overhead light. There, you see me better?
Yeah.
Not much. Okay. Good enough. Go ahead.
We can see you pretty well.
All right.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I'm John Moy, the chair of the Personnel Committee. We're joined by also committee members, Councilmember Streetman and Mayor Carroll, as well as our city administrators, Ron Hanna and Desiree Fregoso. We're conducting interviews today for appointments to boards and commissions that we will, as a committee, we will make a recommendation to full council on December the 8th. We follow a fairly structured interview process for all boards and commissions, whereby we ask just a handful of questions, very low pressure, very informal, but designed to get us enough information to make informed recommendations to our fellow council members. So I'm going to go through and ask you a few questions. Mayor Carroll and Councilmember Streetman may have some follow-ups based on your responses, but that's basically the process that we go through. We'll make deliberations after our interviews today and make a motion at the end of this meeting as to what we'll take to the full council on December the 8th. So that's what you have in store for you. Hopefully nothing is too wild or crazy. But before I get started with the interview, I do always like to offer my sincerest, and I know I represent the same of our staff and our council, our appreciation and gratitude that you would be willing to serve our community and us in this capacity. So first of all, thank you very much. We're grateful for not just your time today, but the amount of time you're willing to put yourself out there for. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump right in. It's pretty, like I said, informal, low pressure, but in terms of your experience and your qualifications, what do you feel like most qualifies you for this role, and why are you interested in serving on the ATAX committee?
Let me just say that I probably am not qualified for this particular position, although I'm willing to serve. My background is in law enforcement. I was professionally, I'm an attorney. I'm now retired. I was the elected district attorney for 24 years back in central Pennsylvania. And, personally did everything from radar speeding cases to death penalty murder cases. Served also on the executive committee of the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association, having served both as president of the association as well as the president of the District Attorneys Institute. Also served as a district attorney representative on the Pennsylvania Commission on Sentencing, in which I was the chairman of the Sentencing Guidelines Committee for 11 years, and also was the vice chairman of the commission. So I had both local and statewide service. Obviously, service to the community and trying to make my community and my state better, I guess, in my DNA, which is why I've been down, pardon me, down in the Isle of Palms since around 2000, renting on Dolphin Row for about 14, 15 years. And in 2014, bought my property here, Two Shad Row. I've been spending half the time in Pennsylvania and half the time here. And when I went back to Pennsylvania in May, unexpectedly and out of the blue, I got a call, did we want to sell our Pennsylvania house? And as things worked, it worked out. So now I'm a full-time resident here. And because I am now a full-time resident, I decided to try to get involved with local government, since I've been involved with government for almost the last 50 years. So that's why I applied. Somebody suggested, doesn't matter what you get involved with something. And then as other things open up, take advantage of that and become familiar with what's going on, and maybe get more involved with things I'm more specifically very knowledgeable about later on. So that's why I've applied, and I thought I applied just generally for any position that came up, and
Gotcha.
That's my background.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. McKnight, and recognizing that we are considering you for the Accommodations and Tax Advisory Committee. What ways do you feel like you could most contribute to that specific committee?
Well, I rented my property over the summertime, so I'm somewhat familiar with all the various taxes that get applied to different people for different reasons here in Isle of Palm. So I've been on the paying end of it, and so I appreciate what that is like, and also am curious as to how all those funds are used. So I think that's one thing that the general population is not too familiar with. And I think that's one of the things that an informed citizenry is a good citizenry, and I think that I could be helpful along those lines, trying to educate the public. I think that's part of the problem is there's, what I've noticed here is there's too often outside forces drive the branding of Isle of Palms, and Isle of Palms ought to be more involved with educating the public about who we are and what we're all about.
Yeah. I like that. Mr. Mayor or Councilmember Streetman, any?
Yeah, I chime in just a little bit there. Number one, we appreciate the money you donated to the city when you were renting your property. Believe me, the rentals have subsidized our lifestyle here on Isle of Palms. When it comes to our property taxes, we probably have the lowest property taxes around because of our rentals that are out there. But at the same time, we want to protect our quality of life too. But again, it's because of rentals that our taxes are so low. But you do bring you say you're not really that qualified, but you are qualified with your legal background. And believe me, that's brings a lot to the table.
Well, Mayor, a long time ago, when I first started to practice law, I was the city solicitor for our county seat, which is where I lived and grew up. And so I was a city solicitor for about 10 years. And then I switched over. I liked the courtroom, so I ended up going and getting involved initially as a public defender, but then eventually as the district attorney, because again, I liked the courtroom. Didn't particularly care for what I found to be somewhat boring being a city solicitor.
Thank you.
Sure. Councilmember Streetman.
Yeah, I just, it's really not a question here, but I just wanted to thank Mr. McKnight here for applying and for his interest. And I echo what the mayor has said too. You're more than amply qualified given your background and everything you've done, and as a district attorney, and of course, having a rental property of your own. So I just personally want to thank you for wanting to get involved in the community the way that you are, and we are really blessed on this island to have a lot of wealth of experience and people that are applying for boards and commissions that are very well qualified. And again, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So our final question is related to potential conflicts that could arise. There's less so in this committee than some of the others, but still the opportunity exists where you could make a decision that could have a negative impact or a perceived negative impact on a friend or neighbor. How would you go about making that decision?
Well, having been in the legal business for 40 years and having to deal with a relatively small community where I was district attorney, the potential for conflicts always existed. And so I've had to weigh those decisions and make the decisions. And I don't recall in the 40 years of the legal practice and the 24 years as district attorney that there was ever a situation that someone was complaining that I was involved in a case that I shouldn't have been involved with, or doing something I shouldn't have done. So I'm not sure how to answer that question other than my personal experience. I never had a complaint about it. So I think I have a fairly good feel for what is a conflict and what is not a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if it was a close friend and it had a direct impact on that friend, it would be a basis to recuse myself. Or else if it involved myself, obviously I would. But there are times when obviously there are situations that come up and it's somebody who's an acquaintance that it affects. But again, I've done it repeatedly where I can set those situations aside and proceed based on the facts and the law.
Excellent. Well, what about at an organizational level? Are you or have you been involved with any organizations professionally or personally that could present a conflict of interest with the city?
No, I think the only organization I belong to, I live in Wild Dunes, as you probably can figure out from my address. And so I belong to the property owners. We all do. But other than that, I'm a member of the Sunrise Presbyterian Church, which that's on Sullivan's Island. So I don't see that would have an impact on me.
Nope. Great. Well, those are all the questions we've got, unless Mr. Mayor or Councilmember Streetman.
No further questions from me, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you, Mr. Abel.
And Mr. McKnight, thank you so much for applying for this position. It's good seeing you again. And again, it's nice to have so many qualified people wanting to serve the city of All Palms. Thank you.
Yeah, I obviously will not take it personally if you select somebody better. I appreciate that on this island there are a number of people. I think if you're able to live here, you obviously have contributed something somewhere along the line, which allows you to live here. And so I do appreciate that there is a wealth of talent available here. But if I'm not selected, I would ask you if you do desire to keep my name available for other positions that may come up. And, as I said, I'm happy to try to serve and give something back to the community. I always try to make wherever I live a better place than when I first arrived. So that's my goal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. The next person that we will be interviewing is going to be Margaret Miller. And she is applying for ATAX. I believe she's currently a member as well.
Said that she did not connect to audio.
That's not me doing dishes. This is.
Margaret, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is John Moy. I'm the chair of the Personnel Committee. We're joined also by Mayor Carroll and Councilmember Streetman, city staff, Ron Hanna and Desiree Fregoso. So, first of all, welcome to our interview committee meeting, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for how you've been serving the city on ATAX already. Thank you for your willingness to continue serving. And thank you just for everything you've been given to the city. So I always want to start off with, we're very grateful for everything you've done and are willing to continue doing.
Thank you.
I know that this is this is different than how things have been in the past with boards and commissions. We felt like, and I want to let you know, in case there's any sentiment that, hey, we are we're not trying to increase turnover on committees or boards. What we're trying to do is acknowledge that there's a lot of people who want to serve, which is amazing and incredible, and try to level the playing field so that folks who have served, at least, they can tell us, yes, we want to continue serving, and we're going to continue showing up and doing what it takes. So that's really what this interview process is all about.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. It's meant to be incredibly informal and low pressure. And really what we're going to do is just ask you 3 questions about serving on ATAX. And we have 3 candidates that are that we're interviewing today for 1 vacancy. We will make recommendations to full council on December the 8th following our meeting today. So today we're interviewing everybody. we are going to make our recommendation, or we're going to deliberate after interviews. We'll make a motion today, and then that motion will be taken to full council on December the 8th. So that's sort of what we have in store for us.
Okay.
I'm going to go through this structured interview. We ask everybody the same 3 questions. And then, based on your responses, Councilmember Streetman or Mayor Carroll might ask you a follow-up question, but short and sweet. And again, really low pressure. We're just trying to make an informed recommendation to the rest of our council.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start with just kind of asking you to tell us about what makes you qualified to serve on ATAX, and what's your interest in continuing to serve in that on the board?
For my qualifications, I've been an island resident for 30 plus years. Take active interest in what's going on with the island. I live across the street from the recreation center, so I'm always looking to see how things are being handled there. We do get a lot of visitors coming in, which is nice to see them come in. The half rubber tournament's always a fun thing to walk down to check out. What makes me qualified is I have a way of looking at things from both sides. If you do like a personality crow type of thing, I'm a very situational person. I don't stand on one side or the other until I am totally informed or have enough information to pass judgment. It's a strength, and it's also a weakness. It's really hard when you go out and you decide, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Oh, they all look good. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. But I think that gives me a leverage over anyone else because I can see and understand both sides and come to an informed decision with the information that's presented.
Great. Well, this is a similar question, but we ask the same thing of everyone, which is, in terms of your motivations in serving on this committee, what are some of the ways that you feel like you can contribute most to what ATAX has before it right now, or will have in these years?
What can I?
Yeah, I'm sorry. In what ways do you?
I got lost.
I know. I'm trying to word it so that I'm not repeating myself, and I kind of butchered it. What ways do you feel like you can most contribute to serving on ATAX over this next term?
I take an active interest in what goes on with the island and the committee, and I understand fully what accommodation tax dollars can and cannot be spent on. Just because they say they're going to promote the island by putting our name in a brochure down on the lower right-hand corner in 2.5 font does not really promote the island. What does it bring to not just our name out there, but what is coming into the island, what people are coming to visit, because that's how your ATAX builds up, is by people coming and staying on the island. So it's not, just having your name on a banner somewhere is not really promoting the island. You need to really have something that's going to bring folks out to see us and stay with us and enjoy our island.
All right. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Margaret, Jimmy Carroll here. How are you?
Fine, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for doing this. Just out of curiosity, after your years of serving, and by the way, her family has served Isle of Palms for generations. She's another person, her father has given to Isle of Palms, so I can't thank y'all enough. What do you see the biggest drawbacks of ATAX? And you kind of alluded to it, but the way our monies are being spent, and how can we make it better?
Part of it is the restrictions that we have already set on us by the government, that it has to go back into a tourist-related function. It really cannot go into something that is going to benefit solely the residents of Isle of Palms. Would it be nice if we were to have a little bit of leeway with that and be able to do something for us? Yes. But can we make that change? No. We have to ensure that what we're doing can be tied back to a, quote, tourist-related activity. some things that have come up to the committee, didn't fully agree with, but, that's everyone's prerogative to agree and not to agree with everything. So just looking at how the promotion is, not just because it sounds like a good thing, are we getting a bang for our buck by investing dollars in something? Like I said, just putting your name on a brochure or a bill, like a playbill, does that really bring people to the island to spend time on the island with us? So if we want to be nice and help out areas and help out different different organizations, but what are we getting in return? Are we really getting something? The dollars we're investing, are we getting a return on those dollars? That answer sort of?
It does, and I guess this has been a very trying year for every one of us. The city, for tourism, for rental properties, for businesses. And we've been beat up pretty hard this past year because access to the beach and restrictions to the beach. And sometimes I wonder whether the CVB has stood up for us like they should have stood up for us or should stood up for us when it comes to promoting our island and what we can and what we can't do. So I just is that something that you would agree with or disagree with, or?
I would agree with that. I think that when everything started happening, we were trying to protect our island by limiting the parking, because when restrictions were lifted, the parking was all over the place. I even had people barbecuing in the rec center's parking lot in front of my house, by the basketball courts, which I thought was sort of interesting. But I don't think the CVB came forward and said why we're doing this or supported us in why we're doing it or why it was happening. I think it was just, no one came forward outside of Isle of Palm saying we're trying to protect our citizens, but it just did not go any further than that. It was more, I think it was more bashing of island residents, and some of the terms that they were using it just was ridiculous. We should have had somebody outside of Isle of Palms, the CVB, maybe come up and stand up and say, here is the reason why. This is, protecting them, that was a very trying time.
Thank you. I didn't want to get too political, but I just wanted to kind of get your take on how people looked at it. Thank you.
Councilmember Streetman, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Ms. Miller, thank you very much for reapplying. How long have you been on ATAX?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It seems like it's something that I have been doing, not really that much this year, but it's something that I have been doing for maybe about 10 years or so.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. If you don't remember, that means that you've been almost a permanent part of it for a very long time. And I know you've only had one meeting this year with ATAX.
Right.
So
yeah.
But again, I really appreciate you applying. One of the follow-ups, and you've already touched on all of this and some of your comments, but I noticed in your application, you said during my commission to the ATAX committee, there were requests to fund activities that did not fully support or promote Isle of Palms in a positive manner. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that for me, please?
I think that some of the plays that were going on at the rec center or just really did not give us the bang for the buck that we needed, because most of the individuals going to the plays were local islanders anyway. Did we ever bring in anybody that came to stay the night at one of our hotels or one of our rentals? I don't think so. To me, it was nice to do. It was nice of the city to do. But if we were questioned on it could we really say that that promoted tourism?
Okay. Thank you for that follow-up. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So that, I feel like we always naturally transition to this question anyway, and that actually might be a good example, that on these boards and commissions, you're sometimes forced to make a decision that could have a negative impact on a neighbor or a friend. Whether you want to use a specific example from the past or just a hypothetical, how would you go about making a decision like that? Or how have you?
I would have to have the facts that would support the decision of saying why we would not promote that with the ATAX funds. If I have facts that can support me, I am fine with making that type of decision. I do it all the time in my job. I'm an auditor. The person that you're not happy to see come, but when I leave, you got a big smile on your face. But a lot of it is, discussing and explaining why it can or cannot be done. So I think I have a lot of experience in doing, that type of discussions and things.
Yeah. Well, as sort of a check the box question related, are you involved in any groups or organizations, either professionally or personally, that could present a conflict of interest with the city, with serving the city?
No, I am not.
All right. I didn't think so based on your resume and application, but we ask everybody, so
Yeah.
we got to do it. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Streetman, any additional follow-up questions?
No, I just want to thank her so much for her years of service, and also just to wish her a happy Thanksgiving.
Well, the same to all of you.
I would echo the same thing as the mayor, and thank you very much for applying, and I'm sure we'll be following up soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. I would echo what both the sentiments of my co-committee members. We're very, very grateful. Thank you.
I appreciate your time doing all this today. It has not been a short day, I'm sure, but I do appreciate your questions, your candor, and wanting to find somebody who would really be able to sit on the ATAX. And I understand financial statements because it's part of my job.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
All right, thank you.
Time. All right, and so that was the last of the interviews. Before we need to go into executive session to discuss those, there is another agenda item. John, if you would like to lead us into that.
Sure. We're under item, we just wrapped item A, the interview of candidates for BOZA and ATAX, and item B is the recommendation from staff for the wage and compensation study. And I did speak to Desiree about this earlier. I don't know, Ron, if you want me to hand this to you, or if Desiree wants to.
Yeah, sure. I'll take this over for now. So we have been interviewing 5 of the respondents for the wage and compensation RFP. And recently we have been contacting their references. We're very impressed both with the references that we have received and with the interviews that we conducted, but we would like to go a little bit beyond the numbers that are, given to us by the companies, and instead, kind of branch out a little bit and see if we can find anybody else who's worked with them to get a little better picture of everything, like a broader scope. So we're still investigating, and we will have a recommendation by the time that we get to the full council meeting in December.
Thank you, Ron. So what I gathered.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Just this might head off any questions. So the other things that I surmised from speaking with Desiree this morning was that there's, I think, 3 front runners, Ron.
Yes, sir. That is the case.
There's a short list of 3 from that 5, and all of them would be duly qualified. The staff would be comfortable recommending any of those 3, but they want to go the extra step of due diligence of contacting references not listed on the references provided by those companies, which is a step that I personally love, because obviously you're only going to do references for your good experiences. And essentially, I think all we're doing, we're really just trying to eliminate anybody who might be a bad fit because there's a red flag from a reference, because all 3 of these are highly qualified. And so, sorry, excuse me. So in other words, we are, right now, we're in a great place that we have 3 really great companies. Of the 6, 5 were really good, or, doesn't matter. We've got 3, they're going to narrow it down to 1 by December the 8th. And what we want to, I guess it's not what we want. What I was thinking we could do, frankly, is let staff make a recommendation to full council on the 8th so that we can maintain that timeline. We did have a pretty tight timeline to get the study completed by budget. And that was the deadline that we self-imposed, but for very practical reasons, that if there were changes to compensation that we wanted to implement in the next budget cycle, that, we needed to get on this pretty quickly. So knowing what we know about the amount of diligence the city staff has put into it, knowing that we have 3 fully qualified agencies, I'm comfortable letting staff make a recommendation to full council without coming from committee, given the timeline. So I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman, I know you had a comment or a question.
You answered my question before I even got a chance to ask it, so we're good.
And I appreciate the extra due diligence you're doing on these last 3. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So I don't know that we need to make a motion or make any votes on that particular direction, but at least could we have some general discussion and any reactions to telling staff, hey, let's just bring it before full council, and this committee supports the approach that you've taken. We feel confident that the recommendation will be supported by this committee anyway.
I for one, support the recommendation that the staff look into it, and whatever they recommend, we go with that.
I think that's a motion you're making, Rusty, and I'll second your motion.
Okay, if it needs to be a formal motion, so moved.
I don't think it necessarily needs to be, because we did only have discussion on there. We didn't have any consideration. So
All right.
Okay.
Just
All
make
right.
it clear.
All right.
And so then the next thing, I just want to say for everybody who is out there watching, we're going to go into executive session if somebody would like to make a motion to do that, and we will come back afterwards to close out the meeting.
And Ron, we have a different link to go to on this, right? For the
We don't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the stream, and then we'll restart the stream afterwards.
So we just stay right here?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make that motion and go into executive session.